Hi everyone, welcome to the channel Barajain D365. So today let's try to explore purchase order reapproval process. For example, let's say there is a workflow setup assigned to purchase order. So when I create a purchase order and submit for workflow, it will go for user approval based on the workflow condition. Now at this stage, let's take an example. Let's say customer reference. So any changes I make to customer reference, if I submit for reapproval, it should be auto approved. So that's the scenario we're trying to explore. So with that, let's get started. So go to accounts payable, purchase order, all purchase order. So once we come to purchase order form, I have created a random purchase order. So let me just get that here. So I've already created a purchase order with all the information in it. So I'm trying to focus more on the workflow process for the reapproval process, right? So let's go to workflow and click on submit. So this is the workflow where I'm submitting for the first time. So I think the workflow is already submitted when I created. So here it is asking for my approval. In this case, I am the approver. So let's say I am going to approve the purchase order and click approve. So let's wait for the change to approved. So you can see now the status is approved. So this is the approved purchase order. Now at this stage, let's say if I go to header, as I explained, we will take customer reference as the example. So any changes I make to customer reference field, and then if I click on the workflow and submit the workflow, system should auto approve. So for that, the first setup is the procurement policy. So go to home page, go to modules, procurement and sourcing. Under procurement and sourcing, click on setup policies. Here we have something called as purchasing policies. So click on purchasing policy. You can use the existing policy or we can create a new policy if there is no policy. So in this case, there is one existing policy. So let's click on this policy. Now, when you go to policy, the important thing to notice here is make sure the organization, the one that you're creating purchase order, should be selected. In my case, I'm working in USMF, so I've added USA here, the USMF legal entity. And if I scroll down under policy rules, there is something called as reapproval rule for purchase order. So select that and then click on effective. If there is no policy already created, you can use create policy rule. So in this case, there is one policy. So let me click on this. So once this form opens, here on the available section is where anything that's available here will be auto approved, and anything that is pushed to the selected form, that means it will require the actual workflow user approval. So as we discussed, I want to take customer reference number field for the auto approval process. So in this, so it is under general. So let me go to general. So here you can see purchase order reference. So when you initially log in, let's say, let me put it this on the left. So every field under general is available here, but let's push all of that. And then let me remove customer reference. So what this does is the customer reference field will not be used for approval process. So once this is done, click OK and then save. And if there is a policy once it's created, let's go back. So that's on the policy setup. So once the policy is set up, the next setup is to do setup in workflow and tell the system to auto approve for the fields that is available under the available section form in the policy. So go to procurement and sourcing, then go to setup, then procurement and sourcing workflow, click on purchase order workflow that is currently being used. So click on the workflow, open. Once the workflow is open, so here it's important to notice that if you have multiple conditions, in this case I have a condition, so there are two approvals. So each approval should have an automatic action. So that's when system will understand the reapproval process to be applied. So now I need to we have included customer reference under policy. Now within the workflow, so this is where the first workflow approval comes into picture. So click on that On the top, we see something called automatic actions. So click on automatic actions. Let's enable automatic actions. And what is the condition for automatic actions to work? So add condition. Here, if I go to the purchase orders, we have something called as purchase order reapproval. So if I scroll down, let's just look for that. So here we have purchase order. Sorry. So let's look for purchase order. It should be under R. Yeah. So purchase order requires purchase order reapproval and is enter a value. Let's select here as no. And what is the automatic action system should do is approve. So when I say no, that means if I quickly go back to the policy that we have created here. So let's quickly go back to the policies. Setup, policies, purchasing policy, then procurement policy USMF. So here we have reapproval process policy. So let's click this. In the general, purchase order customer reference, which is under available. So if any field that's under available, so I can keep here in the workflow setup. Purchase order reapproval value is no, automatic action, and close. So this on this condition. Now there is one more approval here. So go here, go to automatic actions, enable automatic actions, add condition. Again, let's quickly go to purchase order, and here let's say purchase order that requires reapproval should be under R. Yeah, requires purchase order reapproval. It's the same again, where value will be no and automatic action is approve. Close. And now let's click save and close. Version 2 and click OK. Let's activate the new version and again click OK. Now that the new workflow is active, so let's say it's the approved purchase order. So let's click on request change. Okay, it's back to draft. So let's go to click on edit and make changes just to customer reference. Let's say I'll click test, save. Now again, once it's saved, click on workflow and click on submit. So now at this stage, since the reapproval process for customer reference field is auto approve, so system should read that condition, trigger the auto approval, and it should auto approve the workflow. So now let's go to workflow and let's look at the workflow history. So it's still loading. So once the workflow is completed, now let's read what the system has done. So if I just scroll down here, auto completion. So if you see here message, it says that auto completion is evaluated to true. So system has actioned it to approve. So there's no user that has approved this workflow, but system has read the automatic action condition, and since the changes was made to customer reference, the field that we said the system should auto approve, it is evaluated to true and system has taken action. So that's how purchase order reapproval process can be handled in D365 F&O. That's it for today's video. Thanks everyone.